Over the last 5 to 10 years or so, the rosé wine category has really kicked off into the stratosphere, and a lot of that has to do with social media. There were a couple hashtags like Yes Way Rosé and Rosé All Day that really kind of made this a part of pop culture. And I think to a certain point that may be hurting its reputation. Today I want to really kind of like dive in and give it a serious look. We're going to talk about all the different regions, some of the flavors that you get out of rosé wine, and also how to pair it up with food. Wine itself, it was a happy accident. Fermentation was discovered by accident. At one point in history, somebody probably made a mistake with their red wine and they ended up with pink wine. And now here we are thousands of years later with this beautiful broad spectrum of hues and of course flavors too. So today you'll find rosé wine made pretty much everywhere in the world, but in the ancient times, back in the old days, it was found predominantly in regions that grew red grapes. This was a way for winemakers to use their red grapes in the warmer seasons of the year.
So the obvious question is then, how do they get it so much lighter? What do they have to do to the grapes?
All the color in a wine comes from the skins of the grapes. So the longer you let that crushed grape must, as they call it, sit, the deeper the color becomes. So you crush red grapes, let them sit and steep for 12 hours or so, you get a nice light pink wine. So the second way you can make a rosé wine is what the French refer to as saigné, which means like bled or bleeding, I guess. And you start out with the intention of making a red wine, but you bleed a little bit of the juice off in the early hours so that it's just slightly pink. And that also leaves you with more skin and less juice to make a more concentrated red. And the third way to make a rosé wine is the easiest way. You take a red wine and a white wine and you mix the two together.
That almost seems like cheating.
Keeping in mind that a rosé wine can be made from almost any type of red grape, you're going to find that they use different grapes depending on where in the world it comes from. And obviously I think the mind goes straight to France, especially the south of France in Provence near the Mediterranean. And this one right here is a pretty classic example of what you're going to find in the south of France. Really nice and pale pink like that. Almost got a little bit of a salmon hue to it, and most often made with the same red grapes that they use to make wine down there, Grenache, Syrah, and Cinsault. This one here is also from the south of France, and it's made with a rare grape called Negrette. The central part of France, known as the Loire Valley, is also famous for rosés too. This one here is called Rosé d'Anjou, and it's made with two rare grapes. One is called Grolot, and the other one's Gamay, which you may know. Of course, we have Prosecco, which is very famous, and less famous is a sparkling rosé from Georgia, not the state, but the country. Vinho Verde, you may have heard of that before. That's the northern part of Portugal, and this is made from local grapes there. And oftentimes it has a little bit of a sparkle to it too. Oh, we have one here from Austria as well. This is made from an indigenous grape called Zweigelt. That's a red grape. And I've actually done a video about Zweigelt, the red wine. I'll put the link up to that here so you can check that one out too. And lastly, of course, we'd be remiss to not mention the United States. This one here in particular is from the Sonoma coast of California, and that's made with Pinot noir. Okay, so finally, let's taste a few examples of these wines. Let's talk about the flavors. And I don't know, which one do you want to start with? Let's pick one.
Let's go with the one all the way to my right and your left.
The one from Georgia?
Yes.
Oh yeah, I was going to say that one too. Yes. Now, aside from the fact that this is from the country of Georgia, not the state, it's also made with one rare grape that is indigenous to Georgia, known as Saperavi, which is a red grape. And then there's a white grape in here as well, Moscato, which you probably know pretty well. This one here, this is going to be the only sweet one we have in this grouping today. But generally speaking, most high quality rosé wines are always going to be dry.
It looks like a lambic to me.
Yeah, look how intense that color is. Have to learn how to say cheers in Georgian. And then there's like almost like a rose petal, like coming from the Saperavi grape. Ooh.
Right? It's different. It's a unique.
Yeah, it's a little grapey, slightly sweet, but as you said, not overly sweet. Right. It finishes almost dry. Yeah, it tastes like a Jolly Rancher.
It does, right?
Like a cherry Jolly Rancher.
Obviously not as sweet.
It's very fun.
Yeah, yeah. It's all those flavors in a good way.
I think we should go to Provence, the south of France, next.
Wow, what a contrast in color.
Yeah.
That almost looks white compared to the other.
Yeah, this beautiful pale, almost sort of salmon color here is very well known down in the south of France. Flamingos are ubiquitous in that region as well. So you'll see, not in this one here, but a lot of the labels make reference to flamingos. Here's a fun fact. Did you know that flamingos are naturally white and they turn pink because they eat the krill in the water?
I did not. If you hear something weird, it's my mind being blown.
Ooh, right away. Tropical fruit, banana, really strong banana, and this is something that's very common in these Provençal rosés. It's just so gentle and subtle. The acidity is really high. Classic flavor that you get in a lot of these light rosés like this is creamsicle.
Yes.
Yeah, I'm like 5 years old again, buying from the ice cream truck, the half-melted orange popsicle.
Exactly.
Except for this one has alcohol in it.
All right, let's do one more.
Okay, one more. And if we're going to pick something that's slightly different and unique, I'd say let's do the Vinho Verde from Portugal. Ooh, I don't know if you heard that or not. There's a little fizz. These are typically made with a slight bit of effervescence to them.
So it's not sparkling, but it has a little fizz in there.
Yeah, it's got a little prickle. See, it's like it's bubbling here.
That looks beautiful.
We've done a prior video about Portuguese wines. I'll put the link up there for you to check that one out too. The country is like sort of a treasure trove for indigenous grapes. I think there's like 300 of them that we've never heard of before. And look at that beautiful, like almost like cotton candy-ish sort of color.
Gorgeous. Yeah.
And of course the bubbles too. Ruby red grapefruit to be sure. That's really pleasing. Just a light effervescence there that makes it really refreshing. Super tart. And that is very typical for Vinho Verde. Now is the time in the video where we talk about food pairings. Yeah. Generally speaking, for rosés, salty foods work very well because most of them are very, hi there. Most of them are very high in acid. And acidity always complements saltiness in foods. So I could go straight to the south of France and Provence and think of like all the salty apps that they serve down there. Marinated olives, just like a nice bowl of like green Castelvetrano olives would be perfect with something like this. There's a sandwich down there called pan bagnette. And we've actually, you and I have actually done that in the video before. We made,
did do that, I remember.
What is it, tomato, aioli, anchovies, and eggs on it. Something like that would be perfect with a nice Provençal rosé with a high acidity in it. Sparkling versions tend to be even more refreshing. They're very palate cleansing with that acidity and also with the bubbles as well. I like to make appetizers using things like goat cheese or ricotta cheese and usually topped off with a little bit of honey. The sweetness actually counters the dryness of the wine. For something that's a little bit more sweet, like the one that we had from Georgia, you can go desserts in that direction. And the Vinho Verde took us to some interesting places. For example, you were kind of thinking more almost red meat.
I was, and I do think that that's kind of odd.
So red meat could work with this. We would have to try it. But I think more, I would go a little milder than that. So tuna, to me, like a really nice cut of like good quality tuna. And it makes sense, you know, we always say in the wine world, if it grows together, it goes together. So up in the northern part of Portugal, close to the ocean, there's a lot of seafood being had there. So the foods that they eat would pair perfectly with a wine like this. Lastly, let's talk about some pricing. And the good news is that generally speaking, most rosé wines are very affordable. And when I say very affordable, I'm talking like $10 a bottle or less.
What?
Yeah. So most of these were in the $10 range. Prosecco is very popular right now and it's commanding higher prices. So this one was around $15. Because the Georgian one here is just probably harder to get and so rare, that was actually the most expensive. That was like $20. So there's your primer in rosé wines, and hopefully now we understand where it comes from, what it tastes like, what it costs, how to pair it with food, and that it actually is a very serious wine and to be taken seriously when treated in the right context. Trends come and go, but rosé's been with us for a couple thousand years and it's not going anywhere anytime soon. Thank God. So if you like these videos, tasting and learning along with me, be sure to subscribe to this YouTube channel. And thanks so much for drinking rosé with me today, guys. Cheers.